Anyone who's ever dreamed of marrying into money knows the deal. Latching onto the heir of a powerful dynasty doesn't just set you up for life. It elevates your entire family, letting even distant relatives ride your coattails. In my last life, I practically handed my fiancée and my future as the Rockwell heir over to her first love, only to be dismissed as a rabid dog on my deathbed. This time, as I lay in a hospital bed, encased in plaster, my father asked me through bloodshot eyes if I still wanted the marriage. I told him, word by word, to change the contract. I was kicking out the Hamilton family's golden child and replacing her with her sister, Olivia, the one they called illegitimate, the one who knelt for an entire night for me in my past life. I'm doing this because I now know the person truly willing to die for me was never my fiancé. In my last life, my fiancé's first love, Mason, paraded around as a blue-blooded heir, a man supposedly born with a silver spoon in his mouth. He was nothing but a con artist, swindling people while extravagantly flaunting wealth he didn't have. The moment I saw through his facade and exposed him, he flew into a rage. He hired thugs to beat me, and they beat me half to death. As I lay bleeding out on the ground, my fiancé's sister, Olivia, tearfully begged him to save me. But he just watched, cold and indifferent, doing absolutely nothing. "How could that be?" he'd said. "Mason is a wonderful person. Why would he ever hire people to hurt you? Don't think just because we're engaged you've hit the jackpot. You should really take a hard look at who you are and what you're worth." By trying to save me, my fiancé's sister got on Mason's bad side. In retaliation, the goons he'd hired made sure to hit her hard, killing her right then and there. Even in the moment I died on the operating table, my fiancée was still defending her first love, making excuses for him. Reborn into this life, I will not make the same mistake. I won't be foolishly waiting for my fiancée to save me. I pulled out my phone and called my father directly. "Dad, someone is out there causing trouble, pretending to be me. You need to send your people to take care of it. And one more thing. I'm changing the terms of the arranged marriage with the Hamiltons. I don't want Chloe. I want her sister instead." For years, I poured countless funds and resources into the Hamilton family. And what did I get for it? I raised an ungrateful snake. I'm eager to see just how long Chloe and her precious first love can keep up their act without my support. At that moment, I was being forced to my knees by a group of men. My kneecaps ground into the freezing concrete, sending a searing pain straight to my skull. Before I could even process what was happening, a hand cracked across my face. A sharp, stinging pain instantly spread across my cheek. I looked up and saw his arrogant, domineering face. Mason was standing over me, looking down as if I were something on the bottom of his shoe. "You bastard," he snarled. "You dared to humiliate me in public. You must feel pretty proud of yourself right now. Don't you, Lucas?" Mason grabbed a handful of my hair and yanked me up from the ground, forcing my head back so I had to meet his gaze. When I remained silent, he struck me again, several more times, hard enough that I could taste blood in my mouth. So it was true. I had been reborn. It was just an incredibly inconvenient time to come back. Seeing my pathetic state, Mason smirked with satisfaction. He turned to the bodyguards beside him and gave an order. "Keep at it," he said. "Beat him until he can't get up. Teach him a lesson he'll never forget about what happens when you cross me." In my past life, when they had me surrounded like this, I cursed him out. That just enraged him, and he ordered his men to beat me to death right there. I learned my lesson this time. My plan was to just endure the beating and wait for an opportunity to get myself out of this. I never imagined that even if I kept my mouth shut and didn't provoke him, he had absolutely no intention of letting me off the hook. The bodyguard's attacks grew more vicious. Fists and feet rained down on me like hail. I felt as if my bones were shattering and waves of tearing pain shot through every inch of my body. My vision started to blacken at the edges, and just as I was about to lose consciousness, Mason casually told them to stop. He loomed over me, a cruel smile playing on his lips. "Lucas, this is what you get for defying me. If you ever dare to cross me again, I promise your death will be 100 times worse than this." With that, he turned and swaggered away, his bodyguards trailing behind him. I was left alone, lying on the frozen ground, gasping for every breath. Shaking uncontrollably, I struggled to pull my phone out of my pocket. My hand was broken, completely useless. As I fumbled with the screen, I accidentally dialed my fiance's number. "Lucas, what do you want now?" Chloe's voice cut through the phone. "Didn't I tell you not to call me unless it was an emergency? Do you have any idea how annoying you are?" Her impatient voice hammered down on me from the other end of the line. "Chloe, I started to explain, but she cut me off cold. "I've already told you. Mason is a good person. He's kind-hearted. He would never hire bodyguards to attack you. Stop trying to cause trouble between us, and don't even think about driving him away from me. This time, I won't believe a word you say." And with that, she hung up. She didn't even bother to give me a chance to explain myself. In my past life, I had pleaded with her, desperately trying to make her believe me, to see past Mason's hypocritical mask. But she hadn't believed a word of it. She just thought I was being irrational and causing drama. This time, I wouldn't make the same mistake. After she hung up, I gritted my teeth, propping myself up on my broken arm, and painstakingly managed to dial my father's number. "Dad, it hurts so much I choked out. Please, come and get me." A wave of fear and despair washed over me, and I couldn't hold back the tears. They streamed down my face. Years ago, I'd stubbornly run away from home because I refused to accept an arranged marriage to a woman from a family of equal standing. Then I met Chloe when she had nothing, and I actually fell in love with her. My father was furious and disappointed, but in the end, there was nothing he could do. I wanted to surprise her, so I never told her the truth about my identity, that I was the heir to the Rockwell fortune. I never imagined that this surprise would end up being the very thing that got me killed. On the other end of the line, hearing me sobbing, barely able to breathe, my father's voice grew frantic. "Lucas, don't be afraid. Dad is on his way right now." My heart, which had been suffocating with despair, finally eased the moment I heard my father's voice. "My phone has GPS tracking. Dad would be able to find me quickly. In my past life, I was beaten unconscious before I could even call for help. I could only lie there, waiting to die in agony and despair." Then, in the glare of the snow, I was shocked to see Mason walking back toward me. His face was dark, his mood clearly foul. "You still have the energy to call your fiancé? I guess we didn't hit you hard enough." My heart plummeted. I had a terrible feeling I wasn't going to get out of this alive. I glared at him, mustering every last bit of strength to shout, "I'm the real Rockwell heir. I just got off the phone with my father. If I die here, do you have any idea what it'll do to you?" I was trying to use the Rockwell name to intimidate him, to make him think twice. But Mason just sneered, his face a mask of contempt. "Oh, I'm terrified," he mocked. "I'm the real Rockwell heir. Even your own father has personally acknowledged me. Who are you to question it? Don't think that just because you share a name, you're suddenly part of the family." His words struck me like a bolt of lightning, leaving my head ringing. Could it be? Was he my father's illegitimate son? But that made no sense. My father had a severely low sperm count. It took my parents several rounds of IVF just to have me. He always treated me like I was the most precious thing in the world. How could he possibly have another child? My mind was a chaotic mess, thoughts swirling and crashing like a tidal wave. I had to ask my father about this face to face. But right now, survival was all that mattered. Forcing myself to endure the excruciating pain, I swallowed my pride. "You just want Chloe, right? I'll give her to you. I'll break off the engagement. Just let me go, please." He just threw his head back and laughed, the sound dripping with arrogance. "Let you go? In your dreams. Chloe is mine. And even if I kill you right here, today, nobody will care. She told me herself, you're nothing but a worthless orphan that nobody wants." The orphan story I'd invented on a whim to hide my identity had now become the reason I was about to be killed. I closed my eyes in despair, bracing for the final blow. Just then, the roar of an engine cut through the silence. A black sedan drifted expertly into a stop right in front of me. The door flew open and Olivia scrambled out. She threw her arms around me, holding me tight as she cried out, her voice trembling. "Lucas, I found you. I'm getting you out of here." I clung to her shirt like she was the only thing keeping me alive. In my past life, my spirit had lingered, and I watched her. I saw her kneel before her sister, Chloe, for a full day and night, crying and begging to know where they had taken me. But Chloe was as cold and unmoving as a statue the entire time. In the end, Olivia was murdered by the same thugs Mason had hired. Seeing her now, alive, a wave of guilt and gratitude washed over me, and tears streamed down my face. She started to help me to my feet, but suddenly Mason produced a baseball bat from nowhere and swung it viciously at her arm. A sickening crack echoed in the air. The sound of her bone breaking was so clear it made my skin crawl. Olivia let out a muffled cry, her face instantly drained of all color. My heart seized in my chest, and I screamed her name, Olivia, but Mason just laughed like it was the funniest thing he'd ever seen and ordered his bodyguards, "Pin her down." The men immediately rushed forward, forcing Olivia face down onto the frozen ground. Then he walked over to me and looked down, his eyes filled with pure, vicious malice. "What touching sibling devotion," he sneered. "A little foolish, though." I fought through the pain and glared at him. "Mason, she's Chloe's sister. Aren't you afraid of what she'll do to you if you hurt her?" He roared with laughter, completely unrestrained. "Revenge? She'll probably thank me for helping her get rid of the competition. You didn't know, did you? They're only half-sisters. Chloe has despised her for years, always looking for a way to kick her out of the Hamilton family for good." Stunned, I turned to look at Olivia. She was gritting her teeth against the pain, forcing the words out. "Don't worry about me. Just get in the car." My heart felt like it was being sliced to pieces. Tears blurred my vision. But with my limbs broken, I didn't have the strength to even crawl to the car. Mason grabbed me by the hair again, hauling me to my feet. "I'm sending you on your way now," he said, his voice dripping with venom. "In your next life, learn to watch who you cross." He picked up a sharp-edged rock and raised it high above his head. The murderous intent in his eyes was as cold as ice, and a deep chill settled over me, as if I'd been plunged into a frozen lake. In that split second, the screech of tires tore through the night silence as several black cars slammed to a halt nearby. Doors flew open and a team of men in black suits poured out, swiftly surrounding Mason and his thugs. Before he could even react, one of the men knocked him unconscious with a single blow. They dragged his limp body away and stuffed him into one of the cars like a sack of garbage. A moment later, a figure emerged from another car and hurried toward me. He rushed to my side, his hands trembling as he gathered me into his arms. His voice was choked with emotion. "Lucas, Dad's sorry he's late. My son, it was my father." The thread of consciousness I'd been clinging to finally snapped, and everything went black. When I opened my eyes again, I was in a hospital bed. The sharp, cloying smell of antiseptic filled my nose, making my head spin. My father was sitting by my bedside, clutching my hand. His eyes were red and swollen, and his face was etched with pain. "Dad," I managed, my voice weak. "Lucas, my boy, you're finally awake." He pulled me into a hug, his body shaking with uncontrollable sobs. "You scared me to death. I'm never letting you out of my sight again. Not for a second." I leaned against his chest, feeling his warmth. A comforting heat spread through me, starting from my heart. In my past life, after I was murdered, my father's hair turned white overnight. He fell into a deep depression and passed away not long after. This time, I will not let that happen. "Dad, I don't want to marry Chloe anymore," I said, my voice firm. "I want to change the engagement." I looked at him, my tone more resolute than it had ever been. He paused, looking hesitant. "But I thought you adored her," he said, confused. "You were the one who threatened to end it all if you couldn't marry her. Why the sudden change of heart?" A flush of shame washed over me as I remembered all the foolish things I had done for her. I bit my lip. That was before. I see her for who she really is now, and she is not the person I want to spend my life with. I want to change the engagement to her sister, Olivia. My father's expression grew even more complicated, his confusion obvious. But in the end, he couldn't bring himself to deny my request. "I told you from the beginning she was no good for you. But you refused to listen," he said with a long, weary sigh. "But if this is what you want, then we'll change it." Just then, my father's phone rang. As he answered it, his expression slowly hardened into a serious mask. "I have to get back to the office for a meeting," he said, ending the call. "I'll be back to check on you later. I've already arranged for the household staff to come and stay with you. Just get some rest." With that, my father quickly left the room. Only then did I remember that I had forgotten to ask him if Mason was actually his illegitimate son. I instinctively reached for my phone, only to realize the battery had died long ago. I was just thinking I'd ask the staff to charge it for me when they arrived, but at that moment, the door to my room was thrown open. I looked up to see Mason storming in, dragging Chloe behind him. The moment Chloe saw me, she pointed a finger in my face and started screaming, "You vicious bastard! How dare you lay a hand on Mason?" I glanced over at Mason. He had nothing more than a few scrapes, yet he stood there looking smug and self-satisfied. I was speechless. I was the one wrapped in casts like a mummy. How could anyone possibly claim that I was the one who'd hurt him? I stared at Mason, suspicious. "Weren't you being held? How did you get out?" Mason lifted his chin, his expression arrogant. "I'm the Rockwell heir. Who would dare to lock me up?" I couldn't believe how committed he was to the act. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a servant standing in the corner of the room, wearing the Rockwell family uniform. I called out to him, "You come here. Get these two out of my sight." The servant moved, but not toward Chloe and Mason. He walked directly toward me. Before I could even react, he raised his hand and slapped me hard across the face. "Shut your mouth," he hissed. "Do you think you have the right to speak to the Rockwell heir that way?" A burning pain exploded across my cheek. I clutched my face, staring at the servant in utter disbelief. My gaze shifted to Mason's triumphant smirk, and a deep sense of dread settled in my stomach. Chloe stepped forward as well, her eyes filled with disgust as she looked down at me. "Lucas, you are a truly vile person. It was bad enough when you were always picking fights with me, but to hire people to attack him? You clearly have no idea how important he is to the Rockwell family. Just you wait. They will make you pay for this." The slap had left my head ringing, and it took me a moment to gather my thoughts. Then I let out a cold laugh. "He claims to be the Rockwell heir, and you just believe him? If he were really a Rockwell, why would he have a different last name?" Chloe answered as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "Mason told me he uses his mother's surname. Besides, everyone knows Mr. and Mrs. Rockwell have a perfect marriage, so it's perfectly normal for them to be discreet about something like this." In that moment, everything clicked into place. Mason wasn't my father's illegitimate son. He was impersonating me. I fixed my gaze on the servant and demanded in a low voice, "You idiot. Don't you even recognize your own employer's son? I am the Rockwell heir." The servant glanced from me to Mason, his tone certain. "I'm not mistaken. I've worked for the Rockwell family for 8 years. I know who the heir is." At that moment, I wanted nothing more than to go back in time and slap my younger self. It was all because I had left home for Chloe and stayed away for 8 years. The staff had been at the estate for so long they'd forgotten my face entirely. And now, proving my own identity had become an impossible task. Chloe casually pulled a wad of cash from her purse and tossed it on the bedside table. Her voice was ice. "Whatever we were before, boyfriend or not, it's over. As you know, I'm about to marry into the Rockwell family. So stop dreaming. A broke nobody like you is fine for a fling, but that's all." Mason tugged at her arm, feigning disappointment. "That's it? You're not going to teach him a lesson for me? If my father finds out about this, do you think he'll be pleased?" He sounded annoyed, but I could see a vicious glint in his eyes. Chloe stepped forward, grabbed my broken body, and brutally dragged me out of the bed and across the floor into the bathroom. Every jolt sent screams of agony through my bones, and my vision swam with black spots. With a sickening thud, the back of my head slammed against the porcelain sink. A blinding pain shot through my skull, and I nearly passed out. Chloe showed no signs of stopping. She grabbed my hair and began slamming my head against the wall over and over. I tried to scream for help, but the servant clamped a hand over my mouth. He leaned in and whispered viciously in my ear, "That's my young master. If you make a sound and upset him, I will kill you. Do you understand?" his palm pressed down so hard I could only make muffled, desperate sounds. But inside my chest, rage and humiliation burned like a wildfire. My dad's eyes scanned the room, finally landing on Chloe with a puzzled expression. "What are you doing here?" The moment Mason saw my father, a flicker of guilt crossed his face. He instinctively took a half step back to hide behind Chloe. Chloe, however, remained composed. She probably assumed my father was upset to see her with another man, so she quickly explained. "Mr. Rockwell, I was just bringing Mason here to visit a friend. That's all. He was worried it might damage his perfect son-in-law image in your eyes." My father paid her words no mind, his eyes continuing to scan the room for something. Or someone. Well, he didn't see me, his brow furrowed deeper, a clear note of anxiety in his voice. "Where is he?" With that, he turned to leave the room. I struggled desperately in the bathroom, trying to make some kind of noise. But the servant held me down with the weight of a mountain. I couldn't move an inch. In a moment of pure desperation, I bit down hard on the hand covering my mouth. "Art!" The servant screamed in pain. My father stopped in his tracks, his head snapping toward the bathroom. "What was that?" he demanded. Chloe quickly stepped in front of the bathroom door, forcing a smile onto her face. "It's nothing, Mr. Rockwell. One of our servants just slipped in the bathroom. I'll have Mason check on him. You have important business to attend to, so please don't let us keep you." My father eyed her suspiciously, his gaze flickering to the closed bathroom door behind her. Ultimately, he didn't press the issue. As I listened to the sound of his footsteps fading down the hall, a cold despair washed over me. There was no escape. The moment my father was gone, the servant's demeanor changed. He raised his hand and struck me again hard. "You piece of trash, you dare to bite me," he spat. "Do you have any idea who you're dealing with?" My forehead slammed against the cold tile floor, and a moment later, I felt something warm and wet trickling down my face. My vision was stained crimson, and a loud ringing in my ears nearly made me lose consciousness. Just then, Chloe and Mason walked into the bathroom. Mason let out a theatrical gasp, covering his mouth in mock surprise. He then turned to Chloe, his face a perfect picture of a wounded victim. "Chloe, look at him. What are we going to do?" First, he publicly called me an imposter, and now he's playing the victim in front of your father to deliberately poison him against me. I've let it slide time and again, for your sake. I was even kind enough to have my bodyguards escort him home, and he repays me by accusing me of trying to have him beaten up. You have to do something about this. He twisted every truth, turning black into white with a confident, shameless indignation. And the most ridiculous part? Chloe believed every single word. Her face darkened, and she spoke through clenched teeth. "Then he can pay you back." With his leg. I could not believe what I was hearing. No sooner were the words out of her mouth than she turned and walked out of the bathroom. She returned a moment later, and in her hand was a fruit knife, its blade glinting in the low light. Terrified, I scrambled backward, screaming, "Chloe, are you insane? You can't do this. It's a crime." She gave a chilling laugh, her eyes wild and dark. "Without the Rockwell's backing, I'll be ruined. Lucas, if you have to blame someone, blame yourself. You're the one who just had to get in Mason's way." She raised the knife, its point aimed directly at my leg. In the split second before the blade came down, the bathroom door was kicked off its hinges with a tremendous crash. The force of the blow sent Chloe flying across the room, the knife clattering out of her hand and onto the tile floor. "What do you think you're doing to my son?" My father's roar of fury seemed to shake the very walls of the bathroom, his voice thick with rage. He rushed over and scooped me up off the floor, his hands fumbling as he frantically checked my injuries. When he saw the gash on my forehead, the blood, my torn clothes, his face became a mask of cold fury. "You animals! I must have been blind to ever agree to let my son marry a monster like you." The list of students sponsored by the Rockwell Foundation is hundreds of names long. I never imagined that we would end up sponsoring such a piece of scum. The next time we decide to be charitable, we'll have to do a much better job of vetting their character. At that, Chloe finally seemed to grasp the reality of the situation. She aimed a vicious kick at Mason, then threw herself to her knees in front of my father, sobbing. Mr. Rockwell, I'm Lucas's fiance. I didn't mean to do it. This bastard tricked me. He told me he was your son. I was just so confused. Please, Mr. Rockwell, just forgive me this once." Watching their pathetic, synchronized performance of begging for mercy filled me with nothing but disgust. My father gave a cold, dismissive wave of his hand. Several bodyguards stepped forward, seizing Chloe and Mason and dragging them out of the room. Chloe was still screaming hysterically. "Lucas, save me! Lucas!" Her voice trailed off down the corridor until I couldn't hear it anymore. I spent the next 2 months in the hospital, recovering from my injuries. Throughout that time, Olivia never left my side. She would peel apples with meticulous care, cutting them into perfect, bite-sized pieces and handing them to me on a toothpick so I could eat them easily. She'd read my favorite mystery novels aloud to me. And when she got to the climax, she would lower her voice and imitate the killer, a look of mock seriousness on her face. She even learned how to make several of my favorite slow-cooked soups, preparing a different one for me each day, determined to help me regain my strength. Compared to Chloe, who was nothing but a user, Olivia was everything I could ever want in a partner. One evening, after finishing a bowl of her chicken soup, a pleasant warmth spread through my body. I watched her quietly cleaning the thermos and couldn't help but sigh in contentment. I asked, trying to sound casual, "Olivia, do you like me because I'm the Rockwell heir?" Her hand stilled. She turned to look at me, her gaze serious. "Lucas, it doesn't matter to me whether you're a Rockwell or not. The person I like is you." I believed her. In my past life, Mason had her killed in a stage car accident right after my death. She never had the chance to find out who I really was. I just wasn't sure when her feelings for me had started. She hesitated for a moment before asking cautiously, "Lucas, what about you? Does it bother you that I'm illegitimate?" She lowered her gaze, and I saw a flicker of insecurity in her eyes. I smiled and gently squeezed her cheek. "The only thing I'm worried about is you having illegitimate children on me, not where you came from." She looked surprised for a second, then answered with complete sincerity, "That will never happen. I will be loyal to you and to our marriage. For the rest of my life, it will only be you." She took my hand in hers. Her palm was warm and soft. I felt a blush creep up my neck, and my heart began to beat faster. In the days that followed, my relationship with Olivia deepened quickly. I found myself completely captivated by her gentle, thoughtful care. As for Chloe, after she was beaten and sent back to the Hamilton estate, her father was furious when he learned the Rockwells had changed the engagement. The very next day, he disowned her, had her name struck from the family records, and ordered his security to throw her out like a piece of garbage. She was still recovering from her own injuries, and the rough treatment from the Hamiltons' guards only made them worse. She was left on the side of the road, penniless and utterly destitute. She searched all of her pockets and could only scrape together a couple $100, not even enough to get her injuries treated at a clinic. The woman who had once been chauffeured in luxury cars, surrounded by fawning admirers, was now a vagrant on the street, completely invisible to everyone who passed by. Without the backing of the Rockwells, she, a beautiful but useless trophy, meant nothing to the Hamilton family. Meanwhile, because of her engagement to me, Olivia was formally recognized as an heir to the Hamilton fortune and brought into the family's core business. Before, the best she could hope for was a junior management position at a branch office. Now, she was the acting CEO of Hamilton Corporation. The day I was discharged from the hospital, Olivia came to pick me up. She wore a chic, tailored dress and looked absolutely radiant in the sunlight. She carefully helped me into the car, and just as she was about to close the door, a figure appeared. A disheveled woman suddenly darted out, grabbing my arm. She smelled awful, a pungent, sour stench. "Lucas, it's me," the woman rasped. "It's Chloe, Lucas." I looked down. A woman in tattered clothes was clutching my arm, her eyes filled with desperation. Beneath a thick layer of grime, I could just barely make out the features of Chloe's face. "Chloe," I gasped, instinctively recoiling. Olivia reacted instantly, shoving her away. "Get lost," she said. Chloe staggered, but managed to stay on her feet. The sour stench was overpowering. She pointed a trembling, grimy finger at Olivia and shrieked her name. Olivia Hamilton. You're the one who seduced him, aren't you? You're the reason he threw me away for you. He loves me. Me. You bitch, stop trying to turn him against me. The stench was so bad I had to cover my nose. I frowned, my face a mask of revulsion. Chloe, take a look at yourself. You're an able-bodied woman, and you chose to end up like this, a beggar. This is the life you chose. I don't love you. The moment you and Mason conspired against me, we were finished. Chloe shook her head frantically, still making excuses. Mason tricked me. I've only ever loved you, Lucas. You have to believe me. Have you forgotten everything we had? She was trying to appeal to whatever lingering affection I might have had for her. She didn't realize that the Lucas who had been so devoted to her had died in another lifetime. I laughed coldly. Thinking about our past just makes me sick. Everything about you disgusts me now. Stay out of my sight. If I see you again, I'll make sure you can't even beg on the streets. With that, I slammed the car door shut. Olivia got in, started the engine, and we drove away, leaving a stunned Chloe standing alone in the street. As we were driving, Olivia asked tentatively, "If you feel bad for her, I could give her some money." I turned to look at her. "Don't you dare. The sight of her is enough to ruin my day." She laughed softly. "Good. That means you're really over her. Otherwise, I wouldn't stand a chance." I was curious. "So, when did you start to fall for me?" She didn't answer directly, just gave me a mysterious smile. "I'll tell you on our wedding day." As for Mason, my father had him shipped off to a godforsaken work camp overseas. It was a fitting end for a wicked man. For a piece of scum like him, a few years in prison would have been too light a sentence. It wouldn't have been nearly enough. I heard that over there, he was constantly starving, tortured, and humiliated. I never thought I would see him again. But 5 years later, our paths crossed on the street. It was a scorching hot day. I saw him sweeping the streets, dressed in the orange uniform of a sanitation worker. His hair was a matted mess, and he was so thin he was barely recognizable. If anyone got too close, he would shriek neurotically, "Stay away. I'm the Rockwell heir. Don't touch me." I had my driver pull over to the side of the road and watched him for a moment, intrigued. In the years since, Olivia and I had gotten married and now had a wonderful son. Olivia was a thoughtful and loving wife, and our son was a sweet, well-behaved boy. My life was, by all accounts, perfect. With my capital and resources backing her, Hamilton Corp flourished. Olivia proved to have a brilliant mind for business, managing the company impeccably. That day, I took my son to an amusement park. He wanted ice cream, so I went to buy him a cone. When I returned with the ice cream, I saw a familiar figure from a distance, hovering suspiciously near my son. "Mason!" I shouted, my senses on high alert. He flinched at the sound of my voice and slowly turned to face me. I quickly closed the distance between us, grabbing his arm and yanking him back. "What do you think you're doing?" I wasn't doing anything," he stammered, his eyes darting nervously. I warned him in a voice as cold as steel. "Stay away from my son. You know what will happen if you don't." He turned pale with fear, but he was still defiant. "Why do you get to be so lucky?" "Why? I'm the one who should have been the Rockwell heir." I looked down at him and sneered. "After all these years, you're still just as delusional. It seems all that time in that hellhole didn't do a thing to fix what's wrong in your head." His eyes were unfocused, as if he wasn't really there. He began to mutter to himself. "This is wrong, all wrong. You were supposed to die in that alley. I was supposed to marry Chloe and live a life of luxury. That's how it was supposed to be. In my past life, after I died, my father was destroyed by his grief. In the end, Chloe and Mason took over his company. They didn't even bother to keep up appearances. Mason paraded around under my name, squandering the fortune my father had spent a lifetime building, and no one ever called him out on it. Even after my father passed away, he continued his charade, living my life, enjoying everything that should have been mine. I narrowed my eyes, a storm of realization crashing over me. This bastard, he remembered our past life, too. I was still reeling from the shock when he suddenly pulled a gleaming fruit knife from his pocket. The blade caught the sun, flashing a cold, sharp light that made my heart stop. "If we both die," he began, then threw his head back with a crazed laugh, his eyes gleaming with a manic obsession. "Then everything can start over. I will marry into the Hamilton family. I will be the Rockwell heir. It will all be mine." I instinctively took a step back, my voice as cold and sharp as a blade of ice. "Mason, stop dreaming your impossible dreams. A person like you, even if you're given 10,000 chances to start over, would always end up in the exact same place. It's mine. It's all mine," he roared, like an animal that had lost all control. He gripped the fruit knife and lunged at me. Two bodyguards in black suits appeared from out of nowhere, tackling Mason and pinning him to the ground in an instant. The fruit knife clattered from his hand, the sharp sound echoing on the pavement. For years now, I've never gone anywhere without bodyguards. It was precisely to protect myself from lunatics like him. I looked down at Mason, pinned helplessly to the ground, and a cold smile touched my lips. "You really are incapable of change. Maybe you can spend the rest of your life in a prison cell, thinking about all the good you've done." I gave a slight flick of my hand, a silent order for the bodyguards to take him away. Just then, I was pulled abruptly into a warm embrace from behind. A familiar, sweet scent enveloped me. I looked up and met Olivia's eyes, wide with panic. "You scare me half to death," she said, her voice still trembling. "The guards just radioed that someone was trying to attack you." Seeing how worried she was, a warmth spread through my chest. I wrapped my arm around her waist, a genuine, relaxed smile spreading across my face. This life, I had finally rewritten my destiny, and I had truly found my happiness. Reborn after being murdered by his fiancée, Lucas, and her imposter lover, a wealthy heir seizes his second chance. He immediately rejects his treacherous fiancée and switches his betrothal to her kind sister, Jenny, the only one loyal to him in his past life. He then systematically dismantles the villain's schemes, leading to their downfall into poverty and madness. Years later, a final confrontation reveals the imposter also remembers the past and tries to kill him to reset fate. Now powerful and prepared, the protagonist easily thwarts the attack, securing his new, happy life with Jenny and proving he has successfully rewritten his destiny.